They say the Middle East never sleeps, Doug, and something is always happening in the world's most volatile region. And we've seen a good development, a positive development, Doug, which you mentioned, Abraham Accords. We've covered it extensively here on TBN, where it's really, the divide is really stark now, Doug.
Joining us now is Erick. You know, Erick, you've spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and here in the United States, all the focus is on President Biden's trip to Saudi Arabia. I think a lot of Americans don't even know that his first stop on this trip is to Israel. What is the Israeli impression of President Biden and of this trip?
I would say, number one, Doug, it's not as positive as the Israeli impression of President Trump. I can tell you from being in Israel many times, they are big fans of President Trump for obvious reasons. He pulled the U.S. out of that disastrous Iran nuclear deal, Doug, and also moved the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. The jury is still out for most Israelis when it comes to President Biden. I believe this trip will be very telling. Will he make an emphatic, forceful statement alongside the Israeli Prime Minister Yair Lapid about Iran's nuclear program? In the region, Doug, not only in Israel, but in the Sunni Arab nations, they're not too confident that the Biden administration means what it says when it says it will prevent Iran from getting the bomb by any means necessary. That includes militarily. This may fall to Israel ultimately to prevent the Iran nuclear bomb from becoming a reality, because in the region, they don't believe the Biden administration has the stomach to take military action against Iran.
Interesting. You know, the other thing, the kind of wild card in all of this situation with this trip pending now, is that the Middle East has really changed since President Biden was last there as vice president in the Obama administration. Israel was allies with only two Arab nations at that point, Egypt and Jordan. But now, because of President Trump and the deal that he brokered with several other Arab nations, Israel is allied with Bahrain, Morocco, the United Arab Emirates. So that's an entirely different world that he's going to.
It really is. You know, they say the Middle East never sleeps, Doug, and something is always happening in the world's most volatile region. And we've seen a good development, a positive development, Doug, which you mentioned, Abraham Accords. We've covered it extensively here on TBN, where it's really, the divide is really stark now, Doug. On one side, you have Israel, Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Bahrain, and on the other side, you have what I call the Iranian axis, which includes Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Assad regime in Syria. And Doug, by the way, as we talk about the gathering storm, Iran also closely aligned with bigger, more powerful players in the form of China and Russia. So a very optimistic time in the region on one hand, Doug, with Israel forging these new alliances with Muslim nations, but also a very perilous time in the region as Iran is on the march with close Russian backing.
And while the United States continues to work on some form of this nuclear deal with Iran, what are the prospects, let's cut to the chase here, what are the prospects of Israel launching some sort of preemptive strike against Iran to stop their nuclear development?
Doug, I believe there is a very real possibility that Israel will feel compelled eventually to eliminate or at least set back Iran's nuclear facilities, Iran's nuclear program, by military means. If you look at the past several months, Doug, we've seen Israel carry out covert operations against Iran's nuclear facilities, its ballistic missile facilities, even carrying out assassinations of top Iranian Revolutionary Guards officials on Iranian soil. Clearly, the Israeli Mossad has a strong presence in Iran, but it all seems to be building here, Doug. If this Iran nuclear deal does not come to fruition, and the Biden administration, by the way, has been desperate to revive that deal that President Trump pulled out of, if the deal doesn't happen, or if the deal does happen, either way, Doug, Israel believes that Iran is not going to stop its march towards the bomb, and all that leaves between Iran and the world's deadliest weapons is the Israel Defense Forces. And I believe they eventually will feel compelled to take action. And then the region will get even more interesting, Doug, if that's possible, as Iran and its proxies react.
And quickly, how does Israel perceive of this negotiations with Iran? Do they see that this is the carrot to their stick? Is it problematic to them? Do they see the United States working in tandem with Israel?
very problematic, at least for prior Israeli prime ministers. Remember Benjamin Netanyahu, Doug, the former Israeli prime minister, he actually spoke before Congress in Washington, D.C. back in 2015 to oppose the original version of this Iran deal. Yair Lapid is the wild card, Doug. He's the interim prime minister now in Israel, definitely to the left of Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll see what his take is on the Iran deal. He's been against it, but will he stick to his guns as the Biden administration continues to push for it?
Eric, I can't wait to see your hard work. I know you've been working on this for a long time, and you know the region really well, so a lot of people are looking forward to watching it. It's the gathering storm against America.
Doug.
Eric, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Doug.
Hi, I'm Doug McKelway, and thank you for watching Centerpoint. We hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Leave a comment below and keep the conversation going by sharing this video with a friend who needs to see it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.